right, so there was a headline that came out today. 45 years after Bruce Lee's death, his influence still applies in modern MMA. And that's true. You know, I don't know that the Bruce Lee story has ever or will ever accurately be told, right? Bruce was a wimp. Bruce couldn't fight a lick. But Bruce had philosophies, that were very ahead of his time. Bruce was one of the first ever martial artists to say, you know, there used to be a time when you were hard and fast. If you were a karate guy, you were only a karate guy. Or if you were a Aikido guy, you were only an Aikido guy. And you would argue until your last breath that my black belt in Aikido is better than your black belt in karate. And then you've got the Kung Fus and the Taekwondos and the wrestling and the Judos and all these other, for kickboxing and boxing, all the different forms of fighting. But you only trained that one. And you firmly believed, and you were passionate about the belief, but the belief was nothing more than an argument. There was never actually competitions where you could put these guys together until 1993, when we saw and learned. But Bruce, who was a steadfast martial artist, was the first to come out, at least publicly. It gets credited back to him, right or wrong or indifferent. It does get credited back to him for saying, no. You take whatever works from any discipline. If you could use that in the streets, if you could use that in self-defense or self-offense, in hand-to-hand combat, use it. That was a very resisted idea, and I'm sure when you guys hear that now, you go, well, of course, that only makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you as well, but there was a time, all the way up until around 1968, when that was the philosophy. You pick one, and you dance with the one that brought you until the bitter end. Now, that also excluded competition. These guys weren't competing. They were just in dojos, and it was just a fictional conversation. So there really wasn't a need, as silly as it may sound that people didn't get to that revelation on their own, there really wasn't a need to get to it. And at the end of the day, martial arts are just a business, right? They're nothing more than a business. So you want to go out, if you're a karate guy, and sell karate. If you're a karate guy trying to open a school someday and charge students, you can't be seen across town in the Taekwondo gym. Or people go, well, he's training Taekwondo, maybe I should go over there. You had to stay steadfast in your lanes, and then you had to teach your students to stay steadfast in their lanes so they didn't go to other schools. This is where this came from, but Bruce Lee was the first to change that philosophy, and his philosophy turned out to be true. He should get credit for that. I'm not looking to bury Bruce, but there is still a reality when people come out and credit Bruce as though he was a good fighter. There is nobody, and people love to do that. Even good martial artists love to do that, but none of them ever will do a technique in the cage or the ring and go, yeah, I learned that from Bruce Lee. Never. That'll never happen. And the one thing that all these fake martial artists have in common, and it wouldn't matter if you were talking from the Chuck Norrises to Bruce Lee to Judo Gene LaBelle, Steven Seagal, Van Damme, run through the list. And before you guys get your panties in a bunch, and I got to hear all your comments about how, Chuck was a real guy. Chuck wasn't a real guy. Point karate wasn't real then, it's not real now. So I don't want to hear it. He was a lot realer than the other ones. He at least went out and did something, but he sucked too. All those guys suck, but they have one thing in common. Los Angeles, California. All of the great myths of martial arts all come from the same city, Los Angeles, California. The reason that works, and nobody's ever taken the time to trace this back geographically and see how all of these phonies could get over, but the reason that works is, if you've ever been to Los Angeles, California, you're in the wimpiest city in the world. I mean, there's nothing over there but a bunch of wimps, a bunch of guys that are trying to make it in the movie business with plucked eyebrows and makeup on and somebody doing their hair. You are in the biggest mecca of wusses on earth. So you get a guy like Bruce, or get a guy like Seagal, Van Damme, you fill in the blank, Gene LaBelle, you get these guys that are in that town, they go grab some other wusses. Then they beat the hell out of them. In their garages, in their backyard, which is quite literally what Bruce Lee did. Those wusses go on to make it in the media and entertainment business. They now have a voice. So those wusses will now go out and tell whoever will listen on megaphones that go out to the entire world, that guy was a badass. Well, how do you know he was? Well, he kicked my butt. But you're a wimp. You're a wimp. Sure, that guy was less wimpy than you were, but it's important that you guys understand this. The reason that some of these guys get this fake shine, the reason some of these guys are looked at in society as tougher guys than the actual tough guys that go out and do it on television and pay-per-view, can all be tied back to one thing, which is Los Angeles, California.